of reaction papers I can grade because it's fun to grade papers. It's not the grading I like, it's the power. And I'm just kidding. It's fun to read the papers. Grading them is not fun. I want to preface today's discussion about the American Dream. It's only 40 pages long. Did y'all get a chance to read it? It's not a hard one. But it can be a troublesome one because it might not make sense to you. But let me give you an analogy about this paper. One of my acting teachers from he's dead. No, he's not. He's alive still. He's just senile. One of my professors when I was in graduate school used to say, just as he assigned acting one students an open scene. Does everybody know what an open scene is, or I don't know what else they call them. It's where you get a minimum of dialogue that's kind of neutral dialogue, maybe 15 lines each, and you create a scenario using that dialogue and imposing action to give all of the words meaning for that particular scene. You both people I can see are nodding, but I don't know if you actually understood what I just said. Is anybody familiar with an open scene? Put your thumbs up or say
We,
yes or something.
at least in the acting 101 that I took, we actually did them. We called them they were called neutral scenes,
Neutral scenes.
and I
Yeah.
think they're mandatory for most theater majors. So I think probably most of us have done them.
Some of you might have, but some of you might have not taken your acting class yet. And so I really want to be sure that you understand that. So the context that my acting teacher gave were that every scene you do is in some way you can look at it as and between a completely open scene like you do for your acting exercise, and it's a great exercise, and kind of like a Beckettian a Samuel Beckett play where he tells you what to do. He tells you everything that you need to do and doesn't want you to go beyond those boundaries. It's a very closed script for him because it doesn't make sense, or it may not make sense to people if you don't do everything he says. So that the director in those cases gives direction, but the interpretation of the scene is kind of left to the play itself most often. And that's a very closed play because there aren't very many decisions that the actor needs to make to play that character. There are some because we're people. So between those two, he says every scene you do is partially open and partially closed. And one of the first things you want to do is to kind of gauge the amount of leeway you have in the play to make your own decisions and to create your character, and to fill stuff in. Shakespeare, the way that we've gotten those plays is a he writes very open plays. You need to bring a lot of creativity to his plays in order to make them do what you want them to do. Hamlet has way too many themes. You can go with 20 different themes in Hamlet. Midsummer Night's Dream is the same. Romeo and Juliet, the same. It's kind of a matter, and so he's a very open playwright in general, while Eugene O'Neill from the 1920s is pretty closed. And in fact, Liam Neeson, who did a really successful revival of Anna Christie on Broadway. That's where he met his wife, who died in a skiing accident. But anyway, they did an interview, and he talked about the actor's job in an O'Neill play is to fully commit to the words and actions he gives you. It's that commitment of the actor, and if you commit to it, then you find a way through the character to bring the play from the beginning to the middle to the end. Okay. I find this to be a very open play. It could mean a lot of things. And therefore, it's up to you as the reader to bring your creativity to bear to figure out what he's trying to say here. Did anybody look up stuff to hear what what's his name was trying to Albee was said about his own play? I don't know if I have the forward in this copy. Preface. Oh, that's Zoo Story. That's why. Um, this is going to take a little bit. Try to stay with me. I know it's early in the morning. I'm going to read the whole preface. It's only about a page and a half. This is what he said in his preface, and he wrote this for the publication of the play. The comments printed at the end of this preface, while they are representative of a majority of critical reaction to there's a second preface by other people. So I'm going to skip the names. A majority of critical reaction to the American Dream do not to tell the whole story. Naturally not. No sensible publisher will tout opinions antagonistic to his project. And while I have, in my brief 3 years, 5 plays, two of them, but 15 minutes long, and Happy Time as a playwright received enough good press to last me a lifetime. I would like to concern myself here with some of the bad, not because I'm a masochist, but because I would like to point out, foolhardy though it may be of me, what I consider to be a misuse of the critical function of American press letters. I think he's getting to it. For example, the off-Broadway critic for one of New York's morning tabloids had his sensibilities or something so offended by the content of the American Dream that he refused to review the next play of mine that opened. It was done with another play called The Sandbox in repertory. Another example, a couple of other critics, bright gentlemen who, in their opinions for the intellectuous weekly sheets of, sadly, all in all, very small circulation. So he likes these critics, but nobody reads them. Went all to pieces over the nihilist, immoral, defeatist content of the play, and so on. So that's how he saw that, how they interpreted. May I submit that when a critic sets himself up as an arbiter of morality, a judge of the matter, and not the manner of the work, he is no longer a critic but a censor. And just what is the content of the American Dream? A comedy yet? He puts things in parentheses like I do. I didn't get that from him. I just do it. That so upsets these guardians of the public morality. The play is an examination of the American scene, an attack on the substitutions of artificial for real values in our society, and a condemnation of complacency, cruelty, emasculation, and vacuity. It is a stand against the fiction that everything in this slipping land of ours is peachy keen. This was back in 1961. Is the play offensive? I certainly hope so. It was my intention to offend, as well as amuse and entertain. It is nihilist, immoral. Is it nihilist, immortal, defeatist? Well, to that, let me answer that the American Dream is a picture of our time as I see it, of course. Every honest work is a personal private yowl, a statement of one individual's pleasure or pain. But I hope that the American Dream is something more than that. I hope it transcends the personal and the private and has something to do with the anguish of us all. Does that help? Answer me, students. Thank you, Aiden. Thank you, Alan. Does it really help or not? Come on. If,
I always
if
like hearing the author's notes and like prefaces. I feel like understanding their grasp of the character, like it's valuable, I think, audience's own perspective, but understanding like how their interpretation of it, I feel like is valuable, or
okay,
like what the intentions were.
okay, Alan.
Cool. I was just gonna say, I read it's been a while, but I read his Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and just sort of like the way the dialogue flows in that one, from what I remember, and this one were very similar, and there were the themes of like emasculation were very like I picked up on those in both this one, and I was recalling back to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. He has such a it's an interesting way he has the dialogue flow, and I think it's really funny and really, yeah.
And that was more realistic, really, than this one. I've seen I've heard interpretations of Virginia Woolf, and it plays so close to the movie itself was realistic. But it was really well done. Contrary to some belief, Elizabeth Taylor can be a great actress when she has a small not a smaller role, but a smaller cast where she really has an influence on what's going on. She's a very good dramatic actress. But anyway, so with that in mind, what did you get from this play? What did you take away? Alan. Alan.
Oh, it's gonna be a bit jarbled. Shoot, it was really interesting, and just the topics on like the. I feel like I tried looking at it from too broad of a thing. Like I feel like I was like trying to see what's the true thematic thing, but just looking at it from the play, the way that the grandma interacts with mommy and daddy is really funny, and I feel like oh my god, I feel having heard the preface, I think it's like it relates really well with like showing how messed up that the American dream is, this or America is, despite the the American dream, it's great, come live in America and all that stuff. And oh my god, well, one question that I was what is it, the twin, the young man who comes in,
Mm-hmm.
his whole like little story beat where he's like looking for his twin, was that supposed to be like I, comparing it to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, I assumed like it was like a long lost twin son that the parents might have had or something.
I forgot that
But
in Virginia Woolf, that child is imaginary. They made that child
yeah, yeah,
up. Um,
yeah.
in this play, they actually mutilate the first child till he dies,
Mm.
and then this is the twin, and he felt all the pain that his twin felt as they mutilated and cut all his pieces off, and uh, but no, he's supposed to, so he's supposed to represent the American dream.
Yeah, yeah, because his grandma calls him that during and I was picking up like his whole speech. I was he talks about being the twin. He's yeah, when he's talking about how he's looking for his brother and he feels like something bad happened to him, he always talks about being incomplete without him.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? There's this little quote like I don't have the quote, but towards the end of his, I think towards the end of one of his chunks of dialogue, it's like he allows others to gain pleasure from all his acts, but he himself doesn't get any pleasure. I'm gonna try to
He's
find the
empty
quote.
inside.
Yeah,
It's all surface.
yeah.
And I'm not sure. I don't think that the play suggests his brother was the opposite of that. Just that he felt what his twin felt.
This isn't really excuse me, this isn't a very in-depth take, but I just thought it was kind of funny. It kind of reminds me of Buried Child in some ways.
Okay. I've spent a whole career trying to stay away from what's his name? True West, Buried Child. I can't remember the author.
Sam Shepard.
Sam Shepard. Yeah, I've seen him in movies as an actor, and I think he's great. But his plays upset me too much. It's not that he's a bad playwright or that I don't like him as a playwright. I just have trouble getting through his plays.
No, that makes sense. I just kind of the sort of the corruption of traditional middle America.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
I think the aim is the same.
Hmm.
I think Shepard had more qualities of postmodernism than Albee had, but that's because he lived at a slightly different time. Maybe I was just jealous because he married Jessica Lange, and I was in love with Jessica Lange when I was young. So sorry, I was young, never met her. Okay, that's great. I think that's true. I think there is a connection between those two plays. It's a critique of American society. So what's Albee saying about American society? That's harder to pin down. Aiden.
It's very vain, and the way I interpreted it is that like at least with the child that they had, they were so upset with it because it didn't act the way they wanted it to. So it's just the way that perhaps that Americans treat something like as sacred as family as a consumer product,
Okay.
right? They didn't get what they wanted, so they're like, why isn't it working? Like they bought it, right? Or yeah,
Right.
it's the entitlement of it too.
Right. They prefer the finished product of the other twin that came in and apparently took grandma's place. Although that's unclear as far as I could see, but most critics believe that the young man came in so that now he could be the subject of their focus, just like grandma was before. So yeah, and they would prefer the finished product that is well behaved and Americanized so that they don't have to deal with the unpleasantness of well, I guess what they're saying about parenthood is that American parents take all the guts out of their kids. They take the humanity out of their kids to produce the young man who is very good looking on the outside, and is able to give others pleasure by looking at him or touching him, but he can feel no pleasure from it. And so kind of an abstract way, I think he's trying to get to the surfaceness and maybe even the greed of typical American society. The capitalism that in the past we were so proud of and now is kind of crashing down on our heads. I think that's similar. But there's other things involved too. More, it's a very complicated play to analyze.
Yeah, I think I was just thinking about like capitalism in America a lot, just starting out with the hat and like, I don't know, the effect that the ideal image of an American family is. I mean, I'm not sure that the entirety of my demographic is detached from it, but especially like during the time it was written, that there was a specific picture perfect American family, and like there's ways to contextualize it now, but I think I was just thinking about it like of when it was written and how much pressure. And I think it's a good critique on the ideal American family, because there is very much like a almost like you want to have it not because of human feelings, but because it looks good, I guess. It's this. I feel like I'm not communicating what the
No,
thoughts
you're
I was
doing
having,
fine.
but so I was just thinking about that a lot, and like I forget what it's called, but like the mom, the dad, the happy child, like
Nuclear family.
nuclear family. Yeah, I was thinking a lot about the nuclear family while I was reading it, and like I mean, even connecting it to now, like how very much parents have an idea of what they want for their child, and sometimes they cannot let that go. And this being a very extreme version of that, and I'm sure that there is more extreme versions out in the world, but yeah, it very much just took away the humanity of the child and became an object. Like I don't know, and I was thinking about the hat in the beginning too, like you don't like it the way it is, you get something new. And it very much felt like that, doing that with people. And that's, yeah.
Did that story remind you of anything? That the hat? I don't mean just you, Tatum, but anybody. You can respond if you like, but you don't have to.
It did remind me of very much of like, I don't know if you know the Karen archetype that sort of exists
It's
in
exactly what I was thinking of. But go
yeah,
ahead.
I read it, and then she just like the hat is, I think it's like beige and wheat colored is
Right.
the like issue, and so she screams, has a whole meltdown in the show or in the store, and she's very proud of it weirdly to her husband as like a display of like consumer power or something, and then they bring out the exact same hat back to her, and she's like, "Oh, okay, awesome, I love this. This is a great hat."
Right. Right. And she loved the hat until Mrs. Barkley came and said that it was a different color than she thought it was. And beige and wheat are like two different terms for the same thing, really. Maybe wheat's a little bit lighter, I don't know, but it's meant to be kind of an equal thing. And so, but yeah, I thought of Karen's too. So what we're seeing now in a lot of ways is the manifestation of this comic character, and now we have it all over the place in real life. And I've been that person before. I can't deny it. You know, it's hard to talk to people on the phone and to communicate, especially when they say things like, it's not our policy. And then what does that mean? Does that mean I have to talk to your supervisor and get them to change the policy in this case, or what? And yeah, I've been there. It's the frustrations of trying to communicate, but also trying to get what you want out of the communication. And so I just found it quite ironic that almost exact same scenario that we're now seeing people recording all over the place and putting up and putting up. I found those videos more compelling when it had to do with racism during the Me Too movement. Just seeing someone go and start yelling at someone in the store or at a policeman or kids or whatever, I don't find as effective because there's no context. But again, there's no context. That's the same thing with this play. What else did you notice? So the theme is really a very general theme. It's a critique of American society and the things we value and the things we don't value.
That is one of like the broad theme was one of the things that made this like, it wasn't a difficult read, but it was difficult for me to nail down like a core concept to sort of build my perception around, which is usually how I read plays. I think a couple of the notable ones were like the opening scene with her complaining about, or I guess not complaining, boasting about complaining about the hat, and then complaining about Miss Barker's reaction to the hat. And then there was um talking about when mommy was like a young girl, and grandma would wrap like her boxes up, and it was like the food from last night because they couldn't afford a new lunch, and then she wouldn't eat it and she would take it home and give it back to grandma,
And the
which is
night
sort of
before,
like,
grandma wouldn't eat her dinner
yeah.
and she gave it to the girl to eat. So the girl would have something to eat at lunch and the girl wouldn't eat it. She'd eat other people's food and then bring it back. And then her mom would eat it because she was,
And yeah,
I like
it,
that one a lot.
it's a really interesting detail. And oh, there was a third thing that I was gonna mention.
That
Oh
popcorn.
yeah, the emasculation of daddy. Like, I think before Miss Barker comes in, she's like ringing the doorbell, and mommy basically is like, "Oh, you're not gonna ring the doorbell, or you're not gonna open the door? What are you, a woman?" And it works like that. And those, I think, are three, like, I mean, there's like poverty, there's what Aiden is saying in the chat right now, um, and then there's like entitlement. There's a lot of different aspects of like American society and culture that is touched on in this play and are still really relevant to this day.
I agree. Now remember, mommy sacrificed too because she didn't eat the lunch. She ate other people's lunches to give because she didn't want to open the package. It was so nicely wrapped. But that's also kind of a sacrifice. So we do, when we hear stories about the past, there is a sense of humanity in there, that both were concerned that the other one didn't get a chance to eat. And I don't know if that has anything to do with what Albie had in mind, but I mean, I agree with you there. And I want to point out too, Val, just in keeping with the emasculation theme, which is a word I think has a lot less meaning now, because being masculine has kind of become toxic. Well, being masculine was always toxic, but if you were not masculine back in the 60s and before and after, you were looked down on. So you were either toxic or not regarded highly, I guess. So there was a catch-22 there. But anyway, when at the beginning, when she insists he's listening and then tests him all the way through the story, is also very emasculating, that you need to learn. What did I just say? And then you have to repeat it. So there is a sense there of daddy giving up some sort of, I don't know, social cue in order to live in harmony with mommy. Any thoughts about that?
I think like daddy, for the whole, it's weird how these character names are wild.
Yeah.
He just reads as like a little lapdog, really, more than anything. Um, I can't remember off the top of my head any moments where like he and mommy seem to genuinely enjoy each other. I think, I mean, it's almost like they just feel compelled by like the societal expectation of like, oh yeah, you get married and then you have a house and then like everything's good, but like the place that they're in is like slowly falling apart. Like things don't work, the air conditioning's leaking and yada yada yada. And like they don't seem particularly happy with like their quote unquote like fairy tale ending.
Good. That's interesting. I mean, the fact is that's kind of been, that's kind of also an issue today, that everybody complains about stuff. No one's satisfied with what they have. And, um, and yet you see happy people all the time. I think there's supposed to be some sort of script that Americans follow in order to have a happy life, and we call it the American dream. So I think that's what they're and to achieve the American dream, you have to be empty inside. You have to not be able to feel things. Alan?
I was just gonna say, yeah, that I really like that, and I feel as a theme, not as an actual the plasticity of mommy and daddy's sort of idealized American dream. They just seeing them interact. It's God, kind of like it's like really messed up versions of like old 1950s, 60s family shows, stuff like that, and the few characters that seem like real people is like to me is a grandma and the young man in a sense, because she's out there but she seems like she's got some she's more than just like idolizing some fake little dream. And the young man, while he's all devoid of purpose, it seems like he's crying out and trying to find a fix to it. He's at least talking about it, whereas mommy and daddy are just like hiding a lot of this stuff to keep up airs.
I get that. I find that the grandma's the most interesting character in it. She leaves and then comes back as kind of a narrator, and she can still communicate with the young man because she's on stage. What'd you think of Grandma? How does she fit into this whole thing?
She was the best character in the show. She was fucking hilarious. I loved her.
Yes, but why?
She
She's an older generation, so she whatever he's saying about society, she was in a different element, a part of society.
it's sort of like, at least the way I saw it was like, I mean, she talks about how old she is constantly, and I think it's that like she has acknowledged that she's probably very close to the end of her life, and she's like lived out her society's version of the American dream, and now she's just watching the following generation go through the same like woes of like the faults of the dream that she's already sort of like finished, and so she no longer has like an attachment to adhering to like the societal norms of like, oh, how a woman should act. Like, she's old, she can do it, like she can be as crazy and unhinged as she wants to be, and so she's sort of unattached now to the like societal hum that all the other ones sort of resonate with.
Okay. Is there a build to her character? Does she come in and go out the same way? Anybody?
I don't know.
Yeah, Alan.
I want to say she has some kind of change, because towards the start, she's she's not docile, but she seems like a sweeter older lady. She was getting abused by the my mommy and daddy, but towards the end, she sort of it's like she sees Mrs. Baker and the young man, and she sees them as like a way to get out. And you see her start to plot more, and she becomes more, not witty, but I don't know. She seems to grow from like someone who just taking the brunt of everything to someone who actively is able to, or who is trying to escape the situation she's in towards the end.
Okay. Which she does. And she can do it because she won the day old cake contest, or she won baking contest with her Dale store-bought cakes. That must have looked really good. So she is independently wealthy if $25,000 is wealthy. We could make it 100, we could make it you know, 500,000 now these days. And it would probably be the same amount. What else did you glean from grandma? She has all the information. She tells Mrs. Baker about, so that, and she doesn't use names. She just says every time, someone who's like mommy, someone who's like daddy, someone who's like you. So that she I wonder if that has to do with the audience sitting in the theater. I wonder if grandma is now comparing mommy and daddy to the people who are sitting in the theater when she tells that story. Because she never says it's them, even though it obviously is. And
Yeah, I think-
it's go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like it makes it it definitely does. I was just agreeing that I think it does provide an opportunity for the audience to like picture themselves or like draw connections to themselves to mommy and daddy and the world of the play.
Okay. Now, Albee himself was adopted and knew it, and he and his mom had problems because of it. They don't really explain what those are. I'm sure they have an Albee biography somewhere where it explains it, but I haven't read it. And I didn't really, all I read about was that he had problems with his mom and that he was adopted. And I don't know if that means that his mom said, we're going to bring you back to the orphanage or what. I don't know. But apparently that was a very personal thing. And it's a recurring theme, like the baby, the imaginary baby in what is it, Alan? What play did you like?
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Thank you. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which is also it's a very powerful play. Um, so with this discussion, can someone kind of sum up what we think this play might be about? I mean, I guess that was too early to say that. What else about grandma do you remember? What was important to you about grandma? Yeah, Alan.
Well, one of the other things was her grandma and mommy are always bickering, and oh, it was like when you brought up I forgot about the cakes, the cake thing, and that's like grandma trying to do her best, and just it's like something of like I don't know. It's just an interesting thing, like seeing them constantly bicker with each other, and then mommy's always like threatening to send her to the what do you call those retirement homes?
The van.
Basically. The van man is gonna come in and get her. But
And who gets in?
to me,
Who's the only character who gets picked on because of the treatment of the grandma?
I think mommy.
No, in the beginning, they both get mad at daddy for saying whatever he said about, I don't remember what he said about grandma, that she's too old or something. That's too weird. Let's see, when does grandma come in? It's in her very first thing.
Page 7.
When does grandma come in? Oh, she says to daddy, you don't have any feelings. That's what's wrong with you. Oh, that she whimpers and cries. You don't have any old people make all sorts of noises. Half of them, they can't help. Old people whimper and cry and belch and make great hollow rumbling sounds on the table. Old people wake up in the middle of the night screaming and find out they haven't even been to sleep. And when old people are asleep, they try to wake up and they can't, not for the longest time. So he simply says she's measuring. What I noticed is that when mommy and daddy are alone, she's always talking about how she wants to get rid of her mom, grandma. But she always blames the husband for wanting to do that, for wanting to call the van for her. When she talks about calling the van, it's always daddy that's going to do it. So there's this sense of her inner feelings she only talks about when grandma's not there. And then when grandma comes in, she puts those feelings on daddy, which he doesn't want to do. Did you guys note? I don't know why I noticed that. But it's really mommy who's the instigator. And then grandma's the one who so what is the American dream? What are they talking about, the American dream? Besides the boy, the young man, what is the American dream?
I mean, like, it was this concept, and I'm really bad with like history, but it was like post World War II kind of idea that like you come to America, or you come to America or you live in America, you can get a job and then buy a house, get a wife and or husband, um, raise two kids and like create this perfect like little nuclear family and live in America like with prosperity and what have you.
Okay. Liam?
Anytime I think of the American dream, all I think of is the white picket fences. And this play really reminded me of that. But like this play, instead of white picket fences, I got brown picket fences.
Okay.
I know that's just when I like because when I first read it, because I read up, I knew enough about the American dream, but I didn't know any specifics. So I looked up, I did a little bit more research before reading it, and it kind of gave me some more insights. And yeah, like if I were to describe the play in just one phrase, it would be brown picket fences.
So, well, historically the idea of the American dream, I believe, was an advertising campaign that became kind of mixed up with the promise of what America could offer people who came to this country. And it was that anybody coming to this country could work hard, and based on their work and how hard they worked, they would be able to move up in status, as opposed to a monarchy in which the class that you're born in is the class that you're going to die in. So America had this, and it certainly was. It came about historically. This wasn't something that came from the forefathers. It's not in the Declaration of Independence, or in any documents. It is the idea that the United States was a society such that everybody had an equal chance to rise within society. And when that communist, Marilyn Monroe's husband. Arthur Miller wrote Death of a Salesman. The theme of that is that the American dream was a lie foisted onto the poor and the lower middle class in order to keep them in line and keep them working as hard as they can for those who are wealthy. And Willy Loman became the epitome of what happened when people believed that idea that the United States had a society that was equal, that everybody had an equal chance. And it was always a lie. It was always an advertisement. It was always a sleight of hand, because all anybody had to say, well, those people are poor. And what was the reason in the United States that we had poverty? According to our myths,
They just weren't working hard enough.
they weren't working hard enough. And that's really the simplicity of it. And so this boy who becomes the American dream is all outside. It's all the surface, his surface, because that's what America's dream is. It's all surface. We want to believe that, so we do. And you have people saying, well, I lived the American dream. I was born poor and I made myself rich. Most of those people weren't born poor. They may have been born poorer than they were when they were young, but most people who have wealth in this country have wealth because they inherited it.
This is, I guess, kind of off topic, but kind of on topic. There's like, it blows my mind that there's people today who like actively believe in the American dream and like poor is a choice. My friend who works in a lab, the owner has like Teslas and stuff, and they were talking about tornadoes, and people in the lab lived there, and their towns had been hit by tornadoes, and they're like, yeah, it was really sad. It always hit the like mobile home parks. And the owner lady was like, yeah, I wonder why people choose to live in those things, and like use the word choose. And I don't know. I feel like that very much is the type of person who actively believes in the American dream still.
Right.
And
Right.
I don't know, it's just frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lie, and it's a lie that is deeply, it's a myth that's deeply embedded in our psyche. Alan, you had your hand up?
Oh yeah, it was just a funny dialogue thing. So when the young man is first introduced, Grandma calls him, "Oh, you're the American dream," because he's like pretty. She goes on to compliment him how he's strong, he should be in the movies. And then later on, after he does his little speech, there's like what is it? He acts as like he acts as the van man coming to pick her up for Grandma's little plot, and it's just like what is it? Mrs. Baker's questioning him, and he's just like, "I do what I'm paid to do. I don't ask questions."
Right.
I just thought that was like a funny thing where it's like both sides of what people say the American dream is versus what it is. Like he's very much both parts of the American dream. The young man is.
Mm-hmm. Yes, both parts of the American dream. Well, I think Albies here is saying that the American dream is a fallacy. Just like
No, yeah.
just like Sam Shepard was calling into question the myth of the West, and in the West, men were men, women were women, and you were free to do whatever you wanted to do. And therefore, it's just like the myth of pulling oneself up by their bootstraps. You know, it's, you got to have boots before you can do that kind of thing. So and so in 1961, this was a huge, this was you know, what people believed about the country, and people were starting to call that into question. And that's why it got such negative, the play got such negative criticism, not because it was immoral, but because it called out this kind of myth that we had. It's an unspoken myth, really. But just like with the rise of the middle class in the 1700s, um, um, people had to believe that for self-survival. They had to believe that they could move up in America, they could have things that they didn't have. And in a lot of ways you could, but it was all material stuff, and it was all stuff that you bought in order to make someone else rich. And so it was like this myth that was perpetuated by people who have, in order to keep people who don't have striving for something better, even though it was unreachable. You know, sometimes kids could reach, you know, if the parents, well, I don't, that's just going into another logical fallacy. Because it wasn't, I can remember when we first moved to Ashland, somebody came in and real right wing, talking about, anyway, at some point he said he admired me because I had lived the American dream. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you went and you studied really hard, you became a professor, and now you live in this beautiful house. And I said, that's not what happened. My parents died, and I was able to afford this beautiful house because I inherited a bunch of money, and that's how I wanted to spend it, so that it would increase in value. But it certainly wasn't something that I earned. I mean, it's by virtue of my parents didn't earn it. My parents became very wealthy when my grandmother died, because she married she was a widow, and she married a very successful salesman who was very wealthy, then inherited his money. She did nothing to work for it. And that's a scene in the play. Mommy says, I can live off of you because we're married, but grandma can't. You know, it's and you know, even that late in the game, for me, that became, oh, that's what's going on. That's why people are voting for Trump. They think that there's something about him that's good because they think he's rich. Go ahead, Isaac.
Yeah, so when it comes to like more modern critiques of the American dream, like the American lifestyle, I have a couple points to make, but first one and the quickest one is that I think that this play would have had far more impact on me as a person if we weren't in such a heavily like criticizing America and like American policy and American politics, as well as just like socioeconomic beliefs. Is I would make the argument, as uneducated as I am on the subject, that it's easier to do that now than it really ever has been, because it's profitable at the end of the day. They found a way to profit from it.
From what?
From American critique is no longer a threat to the system because they found a way to make money off of it. Point being, one of the most famous, I think, American critiques of the American dream is the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, adapted obviously from the book Hunter S. Thompson wrote. And I do enjoy the parallels between this play and, for ease of access, I'll talk about the movie, the film adaptation of Fear and Loathing, because while this play kind of really hammers home on like the individual family unit and like the denial that they all mutually share to keep this dream alive, even though that they subconsciously know that it's not real at all, but they need to believe in it because that's what like they rely on for like their sanity. And maybe they work hard enough, or maybe they just keep going this way, they'll finally get like their just reward. In Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, it's like the idea is shared through like the metaphor of like gambling or like psychedelic substances, and like this overall idea that the American dream is a dream, it's a pipe dream. And you have to be high to believe it effectively. And like this idea that if you just show up to the right spot and spin the wheel, you become a millionaire. And um, I don't know, I was definitely thinking about that movie and that book a lot when I was reading through this play, just by its inherent nature of being a American lifestyle critique.
Okay. A lot of what you're saying has to do with how you felt about it. And I'm not sure if you feel that the movie supported the myth, or if it was again, well, Hunter S. Thompson was a gonzo reporter.
Absolutely.
The only book,
I am saying that it was absolutely a critique on this mentality that we see in American Dream.
okay. I didn't see this one. There was a previous film adaptation of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas with Bill Murray as Hunter S. Thompson, and I saw that one. Peter Boyle was in it too.
Was that Las Vegas or Campaign Trail?
I think it was Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but I'm not positive. I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was. I think it was less serious. It was Bill Murray. I think it was less serious than the Johnny Depp version.
Oh, you're talking about where the buffalo roam. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if that was a book by Hunter S. Thompson. I think it was an adaptation of Fear and Loathing in Los Angeles. In Las Vegas.
No, it was when they were covering the Super Bowl.
Well, I don't even, it's so long ago, I don't even remember that.
Right.
But okay. Yeah, that was his thing. The only book I read of Hunter S. Thompson was the Hells Angels, in which he joined the Hells Angels and finally got beat up so bad that he had to go to the hospital.
Right. Yeah, getting stomped and whatnot.
Yeah, that's exactly the word he used. That's what it was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
anyways, just trying to draw like a nice parallel between something that's a bit more in the modern, like cultural zeitgeist of media.
Yeah,
that
and
people might be aware of.
I think that Albee was a little bit ahead of the zeitgeist of America. That happened more as the youth of America began to recognize that their parents had kind of empty values because they were supporting the killing of people they didn't even know, and
Right.
it was simply to fight the idea of communism, which the people of Vietnam didn't even comprehend. It was simply two guys trying to, fighting over land.
I just remembered that American Dream was first performed in beginning of 1961, so definitely a more vocal time to be critiquing the American unit. Like Red Scare and all that. What you just said, pretty much.
Right, from 1950s. That was also part of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
So yeah, I mean the Vietnam War was well, the United States has been at war since its inception in some way, shape, or form. And that's just the history of it. And we've only had a certain amount of wars, but we've been fighting. And I'm not enough of a historian to really enumerate those things, but and that's how wealth is built in a nation, is by the government paying industry to support something that's as expensive as war. And that doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. But yeah, I mean it was the beginning of that kind of critique. It was kind of in between the critique of Jack Kerouac, the kind of dropout idea that the Beat Generation had, which was a very nihilistic kind of movement. So it called on poetry to express what they were feeling, and they called on people invented new styles of poetry, and were very innovative in the structures and the forms of poetry. but the topics were also fairly nihilistic, that the things we value aren't valuable, and the things we don't value are, like peace of mind. And yeah, Isaac.
Was he the author of the Dharma Bums?
Yes, I
Okay,
believe
that's what I heard the name
so.
of before. Okay.
He wrote his most famous book was On the Road. I got through chapter 1 and it was so boring I couldn't take it anymore.
Do you ever
Um,
look up like a plot synopsis or anything like that after
I,
trying to read it?
I did not. Well, we didn't have that then. When I
Fair
was
enough.
trying to read it, we didn't have computers. Little alone the internet.
Right. My apologies. I was trying to insinuate that maybe some point more recently you may have looked into it. My
Oh,
apologies
no,
for not
I
making that
haven't.
clear.
I just stopped trying to read it, and I know that my English teachers from high school were really into that. That's why they became English teachers, because of beat poetry um and so it was there was a sense of personal growth going on rather than just accepting what people say. I don't know if that's what led into the 60s. I think that has more to do with kind of stripping the United States of the facade of fighting for something that's right. The Pentagon Papers had a lot to do with that. And the Pentagon Papers kind of revealed that LBJ was just following what his generals said to do. He was a great president in terms of domestic policy. He was the leader of the civil rights movement, even though he was from rural Texas. But he didn't know much about foreign policy, and just believed what his generals told them, and they were lying to him about casualties, about they underestimated the casualties in the United States, and they overestimated and they kind of painted him a rosy picture, so he kept going, and that lasted through Nixon. And that's one of the reasons Nixon had a downfall. But it was really Kennedy who began it, and LBJ who sustained it. But it was because they trusted the people that were in positions of power in the military that weren't necessarily telling them the truth, I think. I was kind of living.
Always so shocking that the people in charge of killing others would lie to you, right?
Right. Yes, that's true. You're so ironic.
Right.
Send that to Alanis Morissette so she can get the song right. Seriously. So back to the American dream. That's kind of the where it came from. This idea that we were not a just society, that that there were people who were favored, and everybody knew that, but it just wasn't talked about in favor of this myth. And that's why it's been holding on so long. I mean, I think you guys are kind of separated from that myth because regardless of what other thing my generation did, and I kind of consider myself the generation that preceded, well, of course I do, because I'm old and you're young. But it's been a long time since these kinds of things were revealed about the government. And we've kind of come through this nihilistic stage in which people were saying, America, love it or leave it. And if you don't like America, too bad. It's my country. Notice the my, not our. And that's still sort of going on, but it's not at all to the extent that it was in my generation.
That's valid. I will say, something that I've noticed just growing up in the year that I was born in, and then, being part of the generation that I am.
What year was that?
I was born in 2001.
Okay.
So I'm 22 years old. And one thing that I've noticed was that, like, I'm not the only one. Like, the American dream idea never really died off. It just takes new forms and appeals to more modern sensibility. An example of this would be like the hustle culture that kind of
What-
permeates. It's
Hus-
like it's called like the hustle culture. Let me type it out for you.
Con men,
Typing it out for you right now.
HUSSLE. Yeah,
Yeah, like the hustle culture and like the idea of like, I mean, I guess a great example of this is before I moved here, I was at the gym back home in Montana, where I'm from, and I was talking to some guy who I was spotting because he needed some help on the bench press, and he was talking to me. This guy is probably no older than 15, 16 years old. Um, and he's already talking about something called drop shipping, which is effectively being a middleman. Low effort is a really good way of making money. Apparently, it sounds like a pyramid scheme to me. Um, but the American dream never really, as like a pervasive idea that's meant to keep you as a consumer and as a worker, and reliant on like a lie that's dishonest to you, that just kind of took a new form of like if you work your ass off and you get rich, that'll make you a better person just morally. And here's all these new modern ways of doing it. Really the only thing that should matter, like you should let your social life die off. You should hyper focus in and focus on results only. Emotionally neglect yourself. Discredit social movements, discredit mental health. Um, all in favor of the physical, your physical body, your physical possessions, um your reputation, you know.
Mhm.
All these ideas of you should appear like the perfect, I'll speak more so on the masculine side of things because very male presenting, that's definitely the element that I'm more subjected to as an individual. um like you have to appear as like this paragon of young successful masculinity, and that's not new. It just took a new form.
Right.
So when you bring in how like the idea of like the American dream has kind of like dwindled a bit since your generation and slightly before, slightly after, I would agree. But it's not because it went away. It's because it put on a new mask
Sure,
and started selling the same thing again.
sure. Because it's all about human beings. And there are human beings who, well, I mean, when we talk about nihilism, the huge amount of people, when I was growing up, lots of people professed not to believe in God, but there was a whole sense that there was something missing from the lives of people because the whole society itself still maintained the idea of religiosity, of belief in a higher power, and belief that your life was not in your own hands, that and it's somehow based on your morality. That was still really alive, and I think that's much less now. But I think you guys are able to find meaning in your own lives much better than we could. I mean, when I was in middle school and high school, I mean, I was really into being Jewish and Zionism and everything they told me. I thought the 1968 war in the Middle East was um, due to an attack by various Muslim countries, and it wasn't. Um, Israel attacked first. And so when I learned about these things that I had been taught that weren't true, or at least that's what I thought I had been taught, I kind of just lost all that because I had put a lot of faith in the morality of the religion rather than the Judaism isn't really faith-based. It's different than Christianity in that way. You don't have to believe in God to be a good Jew. You have to follow all the commandments in the Torah, 613 of them. And that was supposed to give you a good, happy life because you were cradled in this. But I just didn't believe it anymore. And I don't think you guys have to go through it. I think a lot of you have already rejected this kind of idea that the physical is the physical and the spiritual are one. that if you're a good person, good things happen to you, and if you're a bad person, bad things happen to you, which is kind of what religion says, and that's kind of what the American dream was based on. It was a quasi-religious. It's holding capitalism as this that as long as you believed in it and followed it, you'd be okay. And I don't mean that in terms of people professed a religion, but then carried that on to their secular lives as if that worked in the real world. And that's really kind of what capitalism does. If the haves make the have-nots feel like they can rise up in the world, then they're going to have lots of cheap labor, because everything is pushed off to the future. You will get this. You will achieve that. And if you don't achieve it, it's your own fault. And if you do achieve it, somehow there's some kind of morality mixed in that. And I think that's what Albee is talking about. And he writes it as nonsense, I think, because he felt it was nonsense. So you have the grandma, we learn, who gave the daughter, didn't eat dinner so her daughter could eat. And in return, the daughter didn't eat her lunch so the mother could eat. But now the mother is more concerned with whether her hat is beige or wheat. And the trouble of raising a son meant forcing that child to do what you wanted, which meant if they spoke to you harshly, you cut their tongue out. And if they play with themselves, then you cut their wiener off. And then if they continue to do things, you start to mutilate them. And I think that's a metaphor for taking away people's humanity and replacing it with something other than feelings. But in private, that doesn't make you a better person. And so we're kind of seeing this very exaggerated demonstration of what American society had become. And it hasn't stopped. I mean, it keeps going. I don't know what this play looks like on stage, and we'll talk about that next time. But it really is an interesting play, even though the first time you read it, it seems like it's kind of nonsense. I find it pretty brave of him to put this play out, especially as a one act. Any other reactions to the play as a whole? Again, it's really what it means to you that's important, rather than, yes, it's important to analyze it. And really, for me, analyzing a play is gleaning what you think it means and why, and how you can make it mean that as you present it on stage. So your homework between now and Wednesday, God, I'm old, is to think about it. Think about this play and simply decide on what inspires you in this play. Well, like Val did, the things, the stories that he noticed. I'm sorry, the stories that they noticed. And I'm getting there. At least I don't have to put money in when I screw up. And thinking about them and forcing them to mean something. So try that. And that's kind of what I teach in every class. But think about that. And when we come back, we're going to again try and put this play up on stage. It's not cheating to go look at I don't. That's the video thing, right? Venmo. I don't know what that is.
It's a cash
Money.
app.
It's it's a
you pay people. You can Venmo people money.
Oh, okay, I have that. I have
So
that. Yeah, I can Venmo you a couple thousand.
fuck
Get
yeah.
off my nose. I live in a nice house. Um, so kind of think about that, and and then we'll start and try put it up on stage. Talk about the design areas and where it's going to go on Wednesday. And then you only have 2 more plays after that. I think our last play is we'll probably talk about Joe Orton before and then after Thanksgiving. And then the rest of it is you guys working on your papers. Are you working on your papers? Work on your papers. If you haven't gone to the library and started to do the research, do it now, because later will be too late. All right. Any final thoughts for the day? Okay, I will see you on Wednesday.
I got a quick question, Eric.
Thank
Sure,
you, Eric.
Marcos.
Thanks,
Thank
Eric.
you, Eric. Oh, can I do it after class?
Yep.
So I saw the email you sent up for the the
Advising?
forms for for advising, and I got one with Karen Bolda, and it's about registering for like which classes I should do next, but I don't know if I'm able to register because of my tuition bill, but I got it down to like around a good amount, but I'm wondering if it's possible that I can register it with you either tomorrow or somewhere around
I can't lift those.
tonight. Oh, okay. All
I
right.
can't lift but you need to call is it the registrar? No, it's not financial aid. It is, you need to call the people that you pay. I don't remember which department it is.
Okay.
And talk to them about how you can register so you can get those lifted.
Okay. Sounds good.
Let me
Thank you.
see it. Let me double check and see if you have that other
Hold.
yeah, if you have a advising hold. I probably not if you talk to Karen.
Yeah, because it's I got an appointment on the 1st of November,
For what?
but then I realized just for advising to help me which classes to pick out, but I don't know I don't know if it's lifted for me to register for classes yet because I don't know which ones to pick out yet, but I gotta
What's
look at it.
what's your student number?
Oh, um, oh,
It
one
starts
second.
with
Let me look.
940.
Oh yeah, 940-508-103.
103. Got it. And there you are. Are there any holds? This is not telling me. All right, I'm in the wrong place, I think. Okay, I know where to go. I have to go to get your advising page up.
Okay.
And then my advising listing. Oh crap. I hate SOU sometimes. Just
I
for
think
the
we all do.
stuff just for the stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I may not even have you then. Let me go to fall 23. My advisee listing. Oops. I'm getting there. Wait a second. Where are you? Those are the S's. Oh, that's Roca. Okay, there you are. I love your middle name. I think you should go by your middle name.
Well, I blame my mom for giving me my first name, but my dad gave me that middle name. So yeah.
All right. No, you don't have a advising hold. You just have the money hold.
Okay. All right.
I think what they're gonna do is ask for a plan. You gotta call them.
It's a payment plan, yeah. But no, it was worse than that or the bill, and my dad helped me out, and I had to pay some of it too. So I'll get in
Okay.
contact with my dad.
Do you know who to call?
Um, I think I had the number on my email because they sent me an email of like setting up the plan. So I guess I'll have to contact them and look through my emails.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
I'm sorry that you're having these problems.
Yeah. It was just the last year I didn't get the fast food, so that's why I built so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's the only problem I'm dealing with.
All right. So you do not need to meet with me if you don't want to, in terms of
Okay.
advising. But you do need to deal with that one. I wish
Yeah,
I could
I
do
will.
something about that one.
Well, it's okay. I'll figure it out.
All
Thank
right.
you, Eric.
Take care.
You as well. Bye.
See you Wednesday. Bye-bye.